Good evening, everyone. At this point, we're going to call to order the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting. It is October 17th, 2022, and it's 7 p.m. And welcome, everyone. Our first item of business is the open forum. So each speaker is to keep their comment period to 3 minutes to allow sufficient time for others. Comments are to be an opportunity to address the HRA. Please refer to the HRA agenda and minutes webpage for additional ways to submit comments. You may also call 612-861-9764 or email ldubois@richfieldmin.gov with questions. You can call into the open forum by dialing 1-415-655-0001 and use the webinar access code 2458-285-9507 and the password 1234. So if anyone is watching online, that should be on the screen. And looking up, it does not look like we have anybody calling in at the moment, but we'll give people a minute or two to call back so that they can have, because we're on a little bit of a tape delay. Is there anyone here in the audience that wishes to speak? All right, I'm not seeing anyone in the audience. Did anyone submit comments ahead of time? All right, so we'll just pause for a few seconds to see if anyone calls in. All right, seeing that no one has called in, we will move on with the approval of the minutes of the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of September 19th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or corrections? All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved the minutes. Next, we'll move on to approval of the agenda.
I will move the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, then we've approved the agenda. Next, we'll move on to the consent calendar. So, Acting Executive Director Julie Urban.
Thank you, Chair Supple, members of the HRA. The consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the HRA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved, and no further HRA action on these items is necessary. However, any HRA commissioner may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the regular agenda for HRA discussion and action. All items listed on the consent calendar are recommended for approval. There are 2 items on tonight's consent calendar. The first is consideration to approve forgiveness of an interfund loan from the ILN to Cedar Point Commons and authorize a transfer of funds from the ILN to Cedar Point Commons. And the second item is consideration of the adoption of a resolution approving an assignment and assumption agreement to Woodlake Center Owner LLC, an estoppel certificate, and an investment letter assigning the tax increment financing note to Woodlake Health Center Campus TIF LLC. And that ends the consent calendar for this evening.
Thank you. Would anyone like to move the consent calendar?
I'll move the consent calendar for approval.
And I will second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? All right, then we'll call the question. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, we've approved the consent calendar. Next, we'll move on to item number 4, which is consideration of a resolution approving an amendment to the grant agreement with Woodlawn Terrace Cooperative, increasing the amount of funding provided for demolition and rehabilitation work. Acting Executive Director Urban.
Thank you, Chair Supple, members of the HRA. In 2021, the residents of Woodlawn Terrace, a manufactured home community located at 7421 Lindale Avenue South, formed a cooperative and purchased the property from the longtime owner. As part of the acquisition due diligence process, the cooperative identified several improvements that needed to be made to the park infrastructure to make it a physically and financially viable community. The cooperative asked the HRA to contribute $350,000 to upgrade the water and sewer on the site and $60,000 to fund the rehabilitation of a permanent structure containing 2 rental housing units and the demolition of 5 abandoned units. The amount of assistance for rehabilitation and demolition work was based on estimates prepared for the cooperative in June of 2021. Construction costs have increased substantially since that time, and actual bids have come in significantly higher than estimated. Additional work items have also been identified, including electrical upgrades and a 6th unit that needs to be demolished. The cost of these items increases the total amount needed by $49,000, and the cooperative is asking the HRA to provide this additional funding. Funds are needed now for the cooperative to continue rehabilitation work that has already begun. However, additional cost estimates are still being sought for some of the work. So staff recommends that the HRA authorize staff to prepare an amendment to the grant agreement that will provide up to $80,000 in additional funds to cover the expected cost increases and any additional unanticipated increases. Funds will only be provided for actual work performed. The HRA has sufficient funding, as you know, in the Housing and Redevelopment Fund to cover these costs. The property does qualify as substandard, making it eligible for the use of these funds. And I would point out, because some of the extra costs came up at the very last minute, I do not have an actual amendment attached to your packet. Our attorney was out at a conference last week and couldn't prepare that amendment, so I'm asking you to be okay with her preparing that amendment and having the chair and the executive director go ahead and execute that rather than bringing the actual document to you, if you're okay with that. With that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, Bev Adrian from the cooperative is also here if you have any questions for her. Thank you.
All right, questions? Commissioner Vreese Daniels.
Yeah, just a clarifying question. The 6th one that is to be demolished, is that going to be replaced at some point? Is that the plan?
Yes, if you could step up to the microphone.
Of Woodlawn Terrace Cooperative Board of Directors, and I didn't hear your question.
The 6th unit that is going to be demolished, is the plan to replace that?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. That's what the plan is. And in fact, we're going through a strategic planning session right now with the Board of Directors to reevaluate the use of our property and the land that we have available. We have multiple lots in a row that are substantial open spaces, and we're considering the possibility of double-wide units with 2 and 3 bedrooms, because we're hearing that's what the greatest need is. So we're considering that as an option for backfill into the empty properties that we're removing. We also have about 10 empty lots as well, and the hope is to fill up the space and make available affordable housing.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, additional questions? That was helpful to hear about the strategic planning process.
Okay, yep, we're in the process. I'd like to point out also that we are private utilities, okay? And I don't know if people or the city quite understand that we can't just call Xcel Energy to come in and rewire the needs that we have. We have 20 amp service in the 2 rental units. We have to go to 100 amp. I can't just call Xcel to come in. I have to have a private contracting electrician come in to do that. Our water is a well, private well. Our pump and the motor burnt out the end of May. I can't just call the city to come in and replace the pump and the motor. We have to have private well companies to come in. And so we've had substantial costs that we didn't even anticipate because of the privacy of the property and the private utilities. So I just want to give you a little background there. We've had some extreme expenses that we didn't anticipate. We're limping through. We're limping through it.
So as a follow-up question then, would the work that you're doing help make or fix that situation in the future, with getting the utilities replaced in some of that?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be huge, just a huge improvement to the property. It's been neglected for 54 years. And it's time that it's refreshed, and we're up for the task.
All right, thank you. Are there additional questions? All right, Commissioner Hanson.
Well, you mentioned you're on a private well system. Has there ever been any thought of hooking to the city
Oh,
system?
absolutely. We have a grant from the state, from MHFA, to connect to city water. That's being contracted with WSB, an engineering firm that is doing the layout, and hopefully the work will begin in the spring. We already have started our sewer project. I've had 4 sewer episodes that I've had to have on an emergency basis. A company come in to take care of raw sewage just bubbling up in the ground. They have to flush the lines and clear the lines from roots. It's basically roots and debris that have clogged up the sewer lines. But I've started that project already this fall. I don't want to wait any longer and have more emergencies. And we have a grant from the state for that, as well as the city grant.
So that's with the relining and fixing all of that.
Right.
All right, additional questions? All right, it sounds like you're making a lot of progress.
I'm excited. I'm really enthused. The community is as well. The property owners in the co-op are really pumped and stepping up and contributing and making improvements. They're the gardeners and the lawn keepers. We're not hiring an outside service. We're doing it ourselves to save a few bucks. But people want to invest in their community also and participate. So I'm really excited to see this.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions? I had one question. You said about the water. Have you had to go on to bottled water at times? Or?
Nobody drinks the water.
Oh, so it's not safe at
Yeah.
the moment.
No, it has a really strong odor and it's full of rust. It's high iron content, and so it's really colored, and it has an odor, and nobody trusts drinking the water, and they haven't for years.
So going on to the new system is going to be a vast
Oh, very.
improvement?
That was the number one complaint about the park when we were talking with residents about becoming a co-op. That was the number one concern, was the water.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments or questions? All right, then it would be in order to make the motion.
I will move that we adopt the resolution approving the amendment grant agreement, which will come soon, that the chair and the director will review, for the Woodlawn Terrace Cooperative, increasing the funds for demolition and rehabilitation work up to a total of $140,000, and authorizing the chair and the executive director to execute an amendment to the grant agreement.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution and make the authorizations. Are there any additional questions? All right, go ahead.
No question, just more commentary. I mean, it's been a tough year for construction and getting a lot of things happen. We've had many developers come back and ask for increased funds. And so I'm happy to provide more here where we have trying to invest in this community and keep it going. So.
All right, any other additional comments or questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Well, I want to thank staff and also thank the members of the cooperative for all the work they're doing and investing in our community. We appreciate it.
We're very grateful. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on. Our next item is for HRA discussion items. Are there any items that commissioners would like to bring forward? Commissioner Hanson.
Well, it was a number of months ago, I know that the HRA, Planning Commission, City Council met with the owners of the Hub Shopping Center to listen to some very preliminary ideas for redevelopment of that area. And since that time, I noted in one of the staff updates a comment that the undisclosed anchor that would have a grocery component has withdrawn their interest in the site. I would imagine this is going to probably slow the progress on that, on a potential development there.
Yes, Commissioner Hanson. the latest we heard is that they were still, owners were still contemplating the idea of perhaps doing it in phases instead, and could start with the Rainbow property as a first phase. But now it's probably been a couple of months since we've heard, so our assumption is they're working on that piece and that idea. So yes, unfortunately, it's slowed things down, and we may see it happen in phases rather than the big all at once redo. So stay tuned.
All right, are there any other discussion items? All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to the executive director's report.
Chair Supple, I do not have a report this evening.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to claims.
I'll move claims.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve claims. Are there any comments or questions? All right, all in favor of approving the claims, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved the claims. Seeing that we have no further business, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.